Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be discussing how the ExpandIT solution works for service organizations, and more specifically, how approval workflows function in the ExpandIT Field Service software. So I believe most of you are familiar with ExpandIT, but for those who don't know, ExpandIT is a Microsoft Dynamics independent software vendor, and we specialize in service management. So if I haven't met you already, my name is Julissa Gonzalez. I work on the marketing and business development side at ExpandIT. And I also have Michael Frabata, who is a field service product expert and software developer, who will be speaking in just a few minutes. And just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. So we are recording today's session. Everyone who registered will get an email with the link to the on-demand version within the next few days. This session will run for approximately 45 minutes, which includes time for Q&A. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel on your RingCentral console so we can address them towards the end. And if for some reason we don't have time to address all of your questions in today's live event, please be assured that we will follow up with you directly following the webinar. So the agenda is as follows. We'll look at the objectives for the webinar. Next, I'll discuss a few key takeaways. Michael will then take over and get into the demo. And we've also allocated some time for Q&A at the end. And we'll finish off with next steps and additional resources you may use. So what is the main objective of the webinar? The main objective of this webinar is to provide educational training on how approval workflows function in the ExpandIT Field Service software. And during the training, Michael will discuss how to easily filter data relevant to you when approving, time approvals, additions, modifications, and mobile user notifications of justifications, detailed order approvals allowing for product usage updates, comment review, and report review, and approvals external from the ERP, allowing for immediately postable data for billing. And now I'll hand it off to Michael to get started with the demo.
Good afternoon. So we're going to look at, like Julissa discussed, we're going to be looking at the approvals, and we're going to switch over to that right now. So the approvals flow, and really what the goal of our approvals flow is to allow your planners or managers who already log in to the EAS portal the ability to review data against orders or time in general, maybe not against orders, to process that before it goes back into your ERP system. The goal is to have those same people do it, and maybe they don't have access to your ERP system, maybe they do. One of the benefits of modifying data through our system before it goes back in is the mobile clients will see those changes. They'll be notified of those changes. However, if changes are made later in the ERP system, our client won't know about them because we're not looking for, say, historical time data registered against an order. We're looking at time spent and identified from the mobile client. So every company has a different process in how they want to handle approvals. So your company may want to handle approvals through our system. You may want to handle just time approval and ignore orders. You may want to ignore time and just pass that straight back into your ERP. Maybe you're using, say, as an example, a payroll software, and the payroll software has a whole approvals and another piece. So maybe the time flows back in, but orders and lines against those orders gets approved separately, even through ours. So there's a lot of configuration options, a lot of different business processes that we would handle straight out of the box, and you can set up what gets approved when and how just through some configuration settings. So that's the goal of the approval section. So we're going to take a look at that. The approver, again, there's two types of mobile clients. And so if you've watched the other webinars, or if you haven't, they're available online. We have administrative or planner type users, and we have the mobile side user. The administrative type user, they have two different interfaces, and your planner, the person who actually plans that workout to your mobile clients, may or may not be the same person who's approving. So those two modules are broken apart. So you'll see planning board at the top here, but we have approvals right below that. So the approvers can simply come in, click approval, and start looking at approvals. So at this point, you'll notice across the top we have two tabs. We have hours and we have orders. So we focus on hours when we have companies that are utilizing our software. So maybe your company will utilize our software to drive payroll from, or you specifically are looking essentially to use our software, not just to take order details, but to derive essentially, that punch card. I walk in, I grab my card, I punch it in the clock. Our system can do that. And so hours is a useful approval to do that, just hours. It ignores everything else on the order. It ignores items. It's not order specific. We're going to take a look at that here in a minute. Orders is exactly what it sounds like. It is order-based approval. So you're looking at orders individually and the items within those orders. So we're going to start off on hours, and we're going to just look at some of the basics of the approval page. And the first basic that you can see down below is we have some filtering that we can do. So we can filter based off of different dates. So you can see today, I have it set for today's date, but I can do a custom range or look for the current week. A lot of times, and your company may be the same, you might have payroll starting Monday, ending Sunday, or starting Saturday to Friday. Different companies do different things. So your planner can essentially, determine what that week is, look at that, and plan and approve out for that week. Planners can look for one or more employees. So they can actually come in here and select one or more employees at a time. So I, as a planner, may come in and want to look at time for people within my division, within my department. I can do that simply by coming in here and looking and filtering for that. If you remember from both the planning webinar and the mobile client webinar, there's the concept of a responsible person. And that responsible person can be set when creating a work order or sending a work order out to the mobile unit from the planner. And what that really is doing is, normally you're saying who is responsible for this order. And a lot of times that means who's responsible for validating the order. It may or may not be a planner. You might have somebody who does your centralized planning at your company, but he might not be the project manager. The project manager might actually be the responsible party. So in this case, the responsible party is normally that person who's doing the approval. And they can search for themselves if they want to, or another person who may be responsible if they're filling in for others for the point of approvals. You can filter by work type, which is normally something to the effect of hours, maybe double time or overtime if you have those work types set up. You can filter by specific orders or projects, and that's really important. You may not have set the person responsible on the work orders, but you might be the project manager, and so you need to approve any and all time against a project, so you can filter specifically for it. And then the last three are only show items that are approved, deleted, or ongoing. And we're going to take a look at these three as we do the filtering, but let's get down and actually look at how it filter in the data that we'll see. So you can go ahead and apply filters, and I'm going to see time entered for today. And you'll see the first thing you notice is one single line with some basic information, hours and total hours. This will be hours broken out by work type. This will just be the total that's for that day. Below that, you'll notice another line telling you how many people do not have registration of time on this day. You can click it and actually see a list of all those people. However, for this line, I can select it and open it. You'll notice it tells me it has 3 sublines. I can look down in here. I can see for this date range, if there was more than one day within the range, it would break them up by day. Below that, I can see the project and order that this is put against. Next to that, I can see the date that the time was registered for. I can see the quantity and the unit of measure that it's for. I can see if it was a project, if it was registered against a task or an activity. I can see work type registered here. We just touched on that. Work types are derived from your ERP system. I can see the description that will be used for that. I can edit that description. I can see the address that this was done at. We're going to talk about unit prices here in a minute. And then on the right, I can see some additional information. I can hover over and see a little bit more about the order itself. I can copy this line. I can delete this line. So these are the lines that have been submitted by this user on this day. And these are essentially the things I can do against it. So what can I do? Well, the line has not yet been approved. So I can edit this line, and I can edit everything that you see open. That includes the date, the quantity, the task, the work type. So as an example, Mr. Melendez might call in and say, I registered this 10 minutes. However, I registered it as hour, but it was actually supposed to be, say, double time, which this ERP system doesn't have as a work type. But maybe he actually meant to call and say, it's supposed to be 1 full working day as opposed to 1 hour instead of 10 minutes. So I simply could come in here and say, what is the change? And you'll notice the second I make the change, it turns red and requires a justification. So it requires you as a planner to make changes, to have to create a justification for why you're doing it. And so I might say the user had misclocked their time, and the adjustments are made per the phone call that I have with the user. So to save this, I can just simply come down here and hit save. And now I'm working against this, as you can see. It's been saved and it's green. So I, as a planner, can take a phone call before the ERP system ever knows about this data. Take a phone call, I can make the adjustments. And what we're going to do is we're going to see this relate back to the mobile side. So on the mobile side, we're going to see how the user is notified that time is approved. And we're going to see how they're notified that adjustments were made. But for now, what else can I modify? Well, I touched on pricing. The goal of this is not to calculate out pricing from the ERP system as the ERP system would. ERP systems have complicated pricing models. You can do pricing, say, per projects, per customer, per discount groups. There's all kinds of different types of pricing models. We're not trying to replicate that or create the pricing. That's why there's no actual pricing displayed for this information here. If the resource has default pricing, meaning default cost or default price, we'll pull it out and display it here for show. The real goal of this is some end customers want to be able to manipulate the pricing before it goes back. Maybe I want to discount the cost that I want to charge an end customer, or the price I want to charge an end customer. And instead of discounting the quantity, because maybe I want the original quantity to show and I want to cost it at the original quantity. Maybe I want to say discount the price, and I'm just going to say, hey, listen, I'm only going to charge you $80 to send Mr. Melendez out today because you know, it was our fault that we had to come back out. So as an approver, this gives you some leeway to make those decisions. Simply, if your workflow won't accommodate that because you're not going to do that, or if that's done, it's done by, say, the billing department in the rear, you would hide these fields. But that is the premise of showing them, in at least to this demo, of why they would be here. So I'm going to keep going through, and He may have also have called me and said, listen, I also logged a little bit of time against this other project, but it wasn't the correct amount, or maybe I also logged more time on this, but a different work type. So you can still modify this line, but if it's a different work type, again, it's not going to do you any good. But he's already closed this order, so he can't go back and add that additional work type, but you can as the approver. So you can actually copy this line, which creates a straight copy of it. And I could come in and say, he called me and said, hey, we have to add one work day in. I didn't add that. I only added something, 0.34 hours in for this. So I could simply come in here and didn't clock. Okay. Now, what you type in is business policy, and what you allow for the the approvers to do and to change, or whether you mark this down if you have users who are misusing the system. That's all business processes. But this gives you the ability to save that. And so now we've added this in, and we've added one full working day here at the top against that additional job. So you can copy some lines from existing orders, you can modify them, you'll enter justifications. But what if the user calls you and says, I didn't even clock into this other job today. I did the job, I'll finish the job out in the field, but I don't have any entries against it. And so you can come in here and actually add a resource line directly. So you as a planner can come in and say, okay, I can find that order. Maybe I find the project like this, same project. Maybe there won't be a task on here, but I can select the task. So I could actually just find the same. So I meant to find the order. I might find the task that was being worked on. I could select what resource I'm trying to add it for. In this case, I would add it for Mr. Melendez. I might say it's one full working day and add this. So I can add a line directly from here, irregardless of whether it was sent from the mobile client or not. So I can add that to see that information. Lastly, I can delete a line. So I may have added this line, and I may have added it in there, now realizing that this line actually does exist, but it was from the 19th. And so now I realize I don't need this line. I simply can come over, delete it, and I've deleted that line. So how do I then, as an approver, see the full picture? Well, we've seen the picture in terms of the working day for what they've sent you. However, how about items that have actually already been approved today, or items that have been deleted? And so let's apply that filter for today for this user. And you'll notice there's nothing already approved. However, we do have a line that was deleted. And so now we can see that. So you can get more information about the whole day and see more history. So if you're trying to look back, somebody calls in and says, I filed time on the 15th of October, but I don't see it here. What happened to that? Now, they did get notified it was deleted, and we're going to take a look at that here in a second. However, how do you as an approver go back and see it? This is how, and these are why you would see these additional filter options. Let's unfilter this and talk about ongoing. Ongoing as an approver gives you the capability of seeing what is actually happening right now. So why is this important? Well, right now, this work is ongoing, and it's today. And this may be accurate, and in this case it is. This user is in the field working on this order right now. So that time can't be approved or modified because it is ongoing. However, this is different than, say, orders from 5 days ago. let's say a user finished his last order for the day, but he never actually finished it, closed down the application, and he's on vacation. The planner goes to approve his time. He selects to have ongoing, and he would see an ongoing line going that would say 5 days worth of hours if timers are enabled on that day. And he would immediately know that there's ongoing time because the user didn't close out the order. So either they'll have to log in as that user to close it, or they'll have to wait till he comes off vacation and have him do it. But it gives the approver the ability to see time that is currently ongoing, so that isn't lost, so that is known and can either be closed out or recognized that it's happening at this time. Ongoing time, importantly, is also identified in the top ribbon. So it tells you that there are lines that are not yet finalized, and it tells you that how many. So this is important because if you have more than one person at a time, you may try to do mass approvals. So you simply can do mass approvals by clicking this box. And so if you're doing mass approvals, you would be very interested to not approve a whole day if you know that some time hasn't finished yet. Because even though you're not approving the unfinished line, it may mean that you're missing information from that day that would be pertinent to the other lines. Okay, so we've touched on our approval and we've made some modifications. So let's just see real quick what that means back to the mobile users. So again, this isn't the approver seeing this. We just want to take a look at the mobile client so we understand what the mobile client would see. So I'm out in the field, I'm working on an order, and you'll notice in the top right I have a mail icon. When the approval was first modified, when the approver first modified those lines, this popped up and blinked to the user, notifying them that they have a message within their system. So there's two things they can do. They can come over here and view their week sheet. This is their time sheet, and they can view this, and they can see that they can see their overall time for the week number 44. They can see total hours of 4 hours, 4 hours pending approval, and then they can see 1 day pending approval. It's broken out by work type. Down below, they can see hours by work type, and then hours by job below that. So hours that are assigned to job, and it's per unit of measure, or per unit of measure also. So it breaks it apart. So even though this order has time against it, you'll notice there's 2 lines instead of grouping it because it has 1 day and 1 hour. Lastly, it breaks it out by day. So users can simply come in and actually see which days they have time against. So let's go ahead and go back to the approver, and let's just approve this order's time, and we're going to save this. And you'll notice it has now fallen off of my listing. However, I can, again, look at approved. And you'll notice here now it shows I approved it and when. I can now come over to the other side. And I, as a mobile user then, when I pull my week sheet back up, will see that it has been approved. And you'll notice now that some of my approval up here on the top right is also has dropped. So some time has been approved. Okay, so I can see these pieces as a mobile, but how did I know that my time was changed? Well, we got a messages notification, and if I come here, you'll notice that I got 3 notifications. And the description is that I had a registration on this date for this project. This time has been deleted. User didn't clock day, added per call, then deleted. So I get the full notification stream. I get information that it was added, and I get information that I deleted it. Down below that, you'll notice I got notified that it's been modified by me. And what happened? It was changed from 20 minutes to 1 work type. It's been changed from hour to full working day. So, and then what was the justification type? So, you know, a lot of times you'll have union requirements. You know, you can't walk over to someone's time card in the shop and clock it for them. And the same can be said for the approver who's doing it. He has to review that, he has to modify it, and the user normally has to be notified of those modifications. And that's what we're seeing here. And that's why we came back to the mobile side. So again, this is a different view. This is the mobile client's view, but it's just an example of what they would see from the approvals process. So lastly, you can do group approvals. So I can select this. As we talked before, it'll select one or more. I can do this all throughout the system and come in and hit approve. But I'm not going to do it for this specific order because I want to take a look at this order as part of approvals. So at this point, again, hours approval is mainly focused at companies attempting, or not attempting, but utilizing time registrations from us for to replace their time sheet in some way. So whether that's a full replacement of the timesheet, or whether that's you're just approving time that you're paying them if it's hourly, a lot of different processes that you may have within your company that we would want to meet. So the orders approval that we touched on is approval on a per order basis. So again, we have some basic filtering available. The search column where you can search for things such as order number, name, maybe a contact name on the order or an address. This is a search to help you find more order specific information. Normally what we find is when people are approving orders, they're normally doing it for what we call departments. And if you've seen the planning webinar, you know that users are broken out by department. And so normally what we find is approvals are done by department as well. It's normally that we'll see an approver working within, say, a region, department, division. They have different companies. You'll call them different things. So also on the person responsible, which we touched on before, if it's been identified in the orders, then simply I could come in here and look for the things that I am responsible for approving. Lastly, there are two more filters. The first is order status. So the orders are in a status. So those are the work orders out in the field. And when an order in the field gets finished, it enters in a waiting approval status by default. And those statuses can be modified, and the flows can be modified to match a business process at your company. However, just by default, they enter awaiting approval. So we could select one or more order approval statuses that we're looking for. It might skip order approval and maybe go straight to finished. It really depends on your goals as a company. Lastly, what we look for is we look for orders that say need approval. So there is an order that has items that are ready and able to be approved. We can also use this to review historical approvals, just like we could on time. So just like on time, we look for things that are approved. We might look for things that have been approved. We might look for ongoing, which we saw same thing as in hours, or we might just search through all of them. It's the same concepts of being able to find those things. So we're going to go ahead and apply the filters and find the orders that we can see, and I'm going to resort it so that my last order that needs approval is on top. We saw the time for this order on the other screen, but we didn't approve it because I wanted to focus on how you would approve through the order details. So you'll have orders that come in. You can see these orders are all sitting awaiting approvals. I can come in here and click on this, and it's going to pull up the order details. So at this point, I have order details. Across the top, we're going to be able to view files. We're going to be able to view the tasks that were completed, the reports that were completed, some header details of the order, some comments that have been entered. We're going to take a look at these comments here in a minute. And then down below, we're going to look at the lines. It has a summary and a detail tab. So the summary just breaks out some basic concepts. We have 3 material lines. We have 1 resource line for hour, 1 resource line for day. So this gives us the ability to just get a feeling for what's going to be in this order that's available. So at the top, the files is anything that's been attached to this order. So I, as a planner, can say, come in here and see that the user, the mobile user, actually attached this file. So I can actually click on it and view this file. You can see he took a picture of a broken pipe. And so if I'm, say, the approver, and I'm trying to decide if maybe I should comp time if that's part of my business process of approvals, or if I should maybe not charge for materials, or some other, write a different comment because maybe it was a tree branch that had fallen and they need to trim their trees. I can get those information, pieces of information from maybe those files attached. So here are the files attached. I can view the tasks that have been worked on and their current status, and then I can view the reports. So what can I see in the reports? Well, I can see the reports and I can edit the reports. So I can actually come in here and say, well, what was done in this report? And I can click on it, and you can see here that I can come down and view the details of this report. And in a minute, we're going to actually go look at a more in-depth report that we could modify later. Maybe there was a mistake made on the report. The user realizes it later. A work summary with a customer name and signature, I normally wouldn't edit back in the office. But it is possible to edit by selecting edit. We're going to take a look at that here in a minute. So they can see comments that were entered in. You can see they actually told me to see the photo. And you can see that we allowed the person on the mobile client to enter a comment that in theory would print back to the invoice. Again, if you haven't seen the mobile client webinar, I would suggest reviewing that for more information about comments and how they work and who enters them and where they come from or go to. But in general, if you have something that would print back out, we're going to give you the ability to modify that. So you can see I, as the planner, can actually come right in here and modify this. And just say, we don't have to say thank you for what. Maybe we would say thank you to the customer. And then I can save this. You don't have to make that change, but I could. So once I've looked at the top, I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom. We're going to look at the detailed information and see what's in here. So again, I may I may want to approve and review time through the order. And so here you can see those same timelines are here. I can come in, I can approve them, I can delete them, modify them, all of the same pieces that I could do on the other hour screen. I also on this screen though can see the parts that were used against this specific order. So I can see the parts, I can see the date that they were supposedly consumed, I can see the quantities, the tasks that it was consumed against, the inventory location or warehouse location that, which could be truck inventory, of course, in the field that they get pulled from. And again, we're not trying to calculate out customer specific pricing. So the goal here is to not give a definitive price of what something is out that needs to be charged. But again, if there is a base unit of metric price, the base unit of metric cost, we're going to display that out here. And maybe your business process, just like time for parts, allows for you to discount or mark up parts. If it doesn't, you simply can hide these fields and they no longer become aware. However, if those values are passed back into the ERP system, we'll overwrite them when we add or update parts on an existing order, some type of order. I can delete these lines. And you'll notice one thing I can't do is copy these lines. So on the last screen, I could simply say, hey, I want to add another part to this order. I could copy that line. I could copy someone's time. But in this screen, we don't copy, but we do give you the capability of adding. So you simply can come here, click add, choose if you're going to add a new product or a part, add a new resource for time. You can choose those things, and then you'll go through the same additional steps for adding them into this order. So you can add another line. And again, just as it does on the other screen, if I change this, it's going to require a justification. And so I'm going to be required to provide those justifications for those changes as I make them on the line. Oh, sorry, I hit the escape key. Not what I meant. All right. So I can come in and I can individually approve things. So say if my business process does not care about any of the other data, and as a company, the only thing we focus on is costing and tracking the items that are used, I simply could come in and approve these and get these sent back to the ERP to be processed into the order. I could approve just times to this portal, and I can approve individual lines. Or simply, I can come up to the top and approve everything. And approve everything, we'll finish this order off, close it, and move it out of the listing. So it's no longer in the listing at the top here. Now this is the other order that we were looking at that we've already approved the time for. So looking at that, some companies, and yourselves might be included, is you might handle time in the time window and not through orders, but you may still have order data that you want to pull through. And you'll notice this order did have time on it, but I no longer see that time. And by default, we're filtering out to only show us items that need approval, but we could say all. And now you're going to see those lines from the previous hour screen. You'll notice that they're already approved. So we have one deleted line, we had one approved line for this order. Lastly, the item that we talked about reviewing is, how about modifying a report? So on this order, the mobile user filled out a North American sample checklist report. And so you actually, as the approver, could come in and view that, and you could modify that. So I could come in and I could say, did I make this check? And I realized that this check 2 would not be possible. I call the tech and say, hey, you marked check 2 yes, but you can't do check 2 on this piece of equipment. He goes, oh, you're right, I should have written not relevant, but I ran through the report. Well, instead of just as an approver finalizing that, maybe sending in an accurate report through an email to the end customer, you can come in and make that change. If the technician had filled out a signature and all the other parts, that would be displayed here, and you wouldn't have to change anything else. As the approver, you also could add the customer's email address to be sent for any given report. The technician didn't do it, it didn't default. There are a lot of different reasons this may occur. So you can add that, hit save, and then the customer would get the updated report sent in an email to them. And so it gives you the ability to come in and actually, help review and correct. This is especially relevant with junior field workers, and you have your higher level management who's done the job in the past, reviewing data, reviewing reports. You're going to see this more in those instances. So at this point, again, I could just approve everything and send it back. I can modify anything I want. So we're just going to approve everything. So at this point, we've approved the orders that we needed to, and we've approved the hours as we needed. And if we come back here and we look for time, we'll see that these have already been approved. And so we'll see that the approval has already been done and everything's been sent back. Okay, so this concludes the demo of the hours, and I'm sorry, the overall hours and orders approval section and the concept of our approvals workflow.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So I do have a question here, and it reads, just wondering how we can validate where the techs are clocking in from. So the approval only lists the work site address, correct? And sometimes our techs clock in too soon or before they should. Does ExpandIT track where they clock in from?
So we do know where the user is if the application is open and allowing us location services. So there are a lot of variables that go into this. Did you provide the hardware? Can you lock the hardware down so that you can ensure that we have access to their location? The answer is yes. They're using the mobile application, then we are tracking in the background where they are. So yes, we would know. We don't display the clock and location on the approval section. It would be a lat long grid, so you could view it. So if you believed users weren't clocking in a certain location, you can currently review that. You would be able to see where they were throughout the day. So you would be able to go into the planning board, into the map, and do a trace route for that user and actually see where they were throughout the day at what times. So we have the information. We have some customers who've utilized external reporting tools to pull that type of information, such as Power BI. As an example, the information exists within our system. We can report to it. It doesn't display by default through the approval section. I hope that answered that question.
Great, thank you. And then just another question. So how long is historical data available through approvals on the BAS?
So historical data is available as long as you, the company, decide to keep it. So the historical data is, our system isn't going to remove data. The reason it would be removed is if you institute a cleanup process, which does exist within our system, because you're trying to save, say, server room, database space. There's no reason to remove it unless the database is becoming too large and you're trying to trim it. So you as a company might be required legally to keep payroll information for 7 years. So you might remove or purge it every 7 years, anything that gets past the date of 7 years old. So every day it might remove everything older than 7 days. There's no default setup on that. There's no requirement to do it other than whatever the limitations of your systems would be in terms of disk space. But our system can keep that perpetually, so forever, as long as it needs to.
Perfect, thank you. And there's just a follow-up question to the previous question. So it reads, is there a way to get it displayed through the approval section? So where the text is clocking in.
So our system is customizable and it could display a lat long. It doesn't by default, but it absolutely could. However, again, it would be a latitude, longitude, and I'm not sure in general what that might offer. A modification that might be more useful would be to put a button on the timeline that would be clickable and would map it on the planning board map. So in that case, your approver would have to have permissions also to the planning board. We could launch the map and identify maybe on the map both the job and the clock in travel and or whatever the line that you selected the view would be. There's a lot of different options on that, but that sounds more very specific to whatever whatever you as the end customer is the requirement. But it certainly could be modified to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we'll go on to additional resources that are available for your use. So as mentioned, we will be distributing the recording afterwards, so you'll be able to go over the training once again and use it as you may like. And we do have other educational videos. So again, Michael touched upon some of them. We have a more in-depth educational webinar on the mobile client and the planning board. And we will have other educational webinars in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for those ones as well. And lastly, for any technical support, you can always contact support@expandit.com. And if you do have additional questions about the material that was covered, feel free to reach out to me. And with that being said, thank you everyone and have a great day.